Welcome back to Nuclear Proliferation Explained. I'm William Spaniel. Today's topic is the destructive power of nuclear weapons. I've talked a lot about the evolution and design of nuclear weapons, with the goal of making progressively larger explosions. Now I want you to actually have a true idea about just how destructive the initial bombs were versus more recent designs. To do this, I'm going to assume an aerial detonation over the White House. This is a place that a lot of you might be familiar with in the surrounding region within Washington, D.C. I'm also doing this because conceivably that was a major target of Soviet bombs during the Cold War. The reason we're doing an aerial detonation is because this maximizes a shockwave. If you have the bomb explode actually on the ground right below it is going to absorb a lot of that shockwave, and so we're not going to have as much damage as we would if we had an aerial detonation. So an aerial detonation is maximizing the carnage. I'm going to be measuring the damage in terms of kilotons of TNT. That is 1,000 tons of TNT, which is the common way that we measure the size of nuclear weapons. Specifically, I'm going to examine the 5 pounds per square inch or more blast radius. That's the area around ground zero that is going to receive substantial pressure from the detonation. The reason I'm doing this is because Cold War estimates would treat everyone dead within that radius and alive outside of that radius. Of course, that is a quick and dirty measurement. On the negative side of things, you also have to worry about radiation killing people afterward, the electromagnetic pulse, which is going to destroy electronics and create all sorts of other havoc, the public health crisis that comes along with a nuclear weapon being detonated, and the general lawlessness that might come with the absence of governance. You see these sorts of things with a natural disaster. Well, it's the same sort of idea with a nuclear detonation. On the positive side of things, it is possible to survive within the 5 psi blast radius. In fact, the closest survivor to ground zero in Hiroshima was only 170 meters away. As the story goes, he just so happened to be in the basement of the building that he was in at the time of the detonation, and that's what allowed him to survive. It is possible that some buildings will remain up despite being within that 5 psi blast radius. This is the closest building to ground zero of Hiroshima that is still standing. It's the Industrial Promotion Dome. It's only 150 meters away from ground zero. The reason that it was capable of staying upright was precisely due to the aerial detonation of the bomb. Because we have a bomb that's being detonated in the air, things close to ground zero are facing lots of downward pressure instead of sideways pressure. And as a consequence, this building in particular was capable of withstanding the shock wave because it was being forced downward and it was capable of surviving that. That being said, this being even closer than 170 meters, everyone in the building died. So while the building survived, the people did not. A couple of last technical methods points. I'm using maps from Google Earth, and I'm getting the estimates from NukeMap. NukeMap is a very interesting website that allows you to choose a location and choose a type of bomb and detonate that bomb over that location. It will then estimate how destructive it would be. It will show you different blast radius in terms of pressure and radiation and that sort of thing. So if you're not as familiar with Washington, D.C., then you might want to go onto this website, choose your own hometown, and start detonating bombs there. And then that might give you a truer feeling about what would happen in the event of a nuclear attack. Let's start things simple with the Davy Crockett. It is the smallest weapon ever developed or tested at only 0.02 kilotons. You can see that the weapon itself is very small. That's because it was designed to be a tactical nuclear weapon. Soldiers could bring this out onto the battlefield, point it at the other side, and then fire it. There were all sorts of problems associated with actually doing that in practice, so it was never actually used or deployed, but nevertheless they tried it out. And you can see that this sort of weapon, because it has only a 0.02 kiloton yield, actually doesn't destroy all that much. Yeah, the White House is within entirely that radius, so the White House is definitely going to be destroyed. The Treasury building on the right, part of that is within the yield radius, and so that is going to not be very good. The executive office building on the left is also partially within the radius. Part of Lafayette Square up top is within the radius, but there's not much more around that within the 5 psi radius that's going to be hit. So this is showing to you that in fact nuclear weapons, if you scale them down enough, don't actually have that much destructive power. Next up is the 2006 North Korean test. This was their first test, and it was likely a fizzle, so it didn't actually give the full yield that it was supposed to. But nevertheless, we have a 0.5 kiloton detonation, and if we put that on the map, we see that we're already starting to expand out. Here we're actually getting some of the ellipse down below being hit with the nuclear weapon, and lots of stuff around the White House, not just the White House itself anymore. To give you some conventional explosive context, I wanted to include something that was not a nuclear blast. The 2020 Beirut explosion was not nuclear. It was entirely conventional. The estimates at the time of production were that the blast had a 1.5 kiloton yield. And if we put that in terms of a nuclear weapon, then we start getting further out. Now we've zoomed out the map, and you can see that this radius is getting us all the way up until the National Mall. You can see that the red arrow there is the Washington Monument. So we're not quite yet at the Washington Monument, but we're getting darn close with a 1.5 kiloton blast. Going back to North Korea, this is the 2009 test, their second. This one was a success. It had a detonation yield of 6 kilotons. You put that on the map. Now we have hit the Washington Monument officially, and we're getting lots of the National Mall, but we are not yet at the Lincoln Memorial, where the red arrow is currently pointing. Now to the two weapons that were used offensively during World War II, starting with Hiroshima at 15 kilotons. You can see that we have the Lincoln Memorial being hit this time, but the US Capitol building, on the right where the arrow is pointing, is not yet within the 5 psi radius. For further perspective, the Hiroshima bombing destroyed 4.4 square miles of that city. In contrast, the firebombing of Tokyo destroyed 15.8 square miles. I want you to think about that for a moment, because we're comparing apples to oranges here. It is true that the firebombing of Tokyo destroyed a lot more of the city. But the Hiroshima bombing was a single weapon. In a single blink of an eye, 4.4 square miles were destroyed. Whereas it took an entire night and a squadron of bombers non-stop bombing the city of Tokyo for 15.8 square miles to be destroyed. Nagasaki is the other bomb from World War II. And we're seeing that the circle has stretched out a little bit further, but not too much of a difference between this one and Hiroshima. Next up is greenhouse item, and you will recall that this is the beginning of boosted fission devices. And you can see that we've also zoomed out even further. We have the US Capitol building just within the 5 psi blast radius, but the next thing up that has not been destroyed is the Pentagon. You can kind of make it out down there where that red arrow is with the 5-shaped building. Pentagon is going to survive. Heading back to North Korea, this is going to be their 2017 test, their most recent of tests. And it is a thermonuclear weapon, albeit a relatively weak one. Still, we are now getting the Pentagon destroyed this time. And you can see that the greenery around the Pentagon just to the left, part of that is in the 5 psi blast radius. That's Arlington National Cemetery. So half of that is being destroyed. The remaining half is not within the 5 psi radius. Fun nuclear fact about the Pentagon. The middle of it is a courtyard. So the story goes, Soviet spies were noticing that lots of people within the Pentagon would congregate in the center of this courtyard on a regular basis in the middle of the day. There's a little bit of a puzzlement about what was actually there and what they were doing. It turns out it's a hot dog stand, which is appropriately called Ground Zero. The joke being that this would be a central target for the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons in the event of a nuclear exchange. Greenhouse George is next on the list, clocking in at 225 kilotons. You'll remember that this was the proof of concept bomb for the United States as it was gearing up to building a true hydrogen weapon. And now we have all of Arlington National Cemetery within the 5 psi blast radius. Next is the B-83. It is notable for being the largest weapon still in the US arsenal, weighing in at 1.2 megatons. Notice the change in units here. Before we were dealing with kilotons, thousands of tons of TNT. Now we've upgraded. We're at megatons, thousands of tons of TNT. And with the B-83 producing 1.2 megatons, we have a correspondingly very large blast radius. You'll notice that I have put in red here the Reagan National Airport, and that is entirely within the 5 psi blast radius. So you can say goodbye to it. Another fun nuclear fact is that if tomorrow we were to find a meteor on a collision course with Earth, and we didn't have time to come up with some sort of fancy solution, in theory, we would be launching B-83s at the meteor, crossing our fingers, praying, and hoping for the best. Getting even bigger, we have IV Mike at 10.4 megatons. You will remember that this was part of the US's series of tests on hydrogen weapons, where this one was the first true hydrogen bomb that the United States tested, but was not practical. It was very, very large, so it couldn't actually be used offensively. Nevertheless, 10.4 megatons is quite a bit, and now we've had to zoom out even further, to the point where it's hard to even discern where the White House once was. Castle Bravo was the last of the series of US thermonuclear weapons tests that we had talked about. It was the first practical weapon to be tested, and it has a 15 megaton yield. Plotting that on the map, we can see that basically all of Washington, D.C. is destroyed at this point. There's not much left of the Beltway. The final bomb on our list is the Tsar Bomba, weighing in at 50 megatons. That is the actual yield that the Soviet Union put in the bomb that they tested. However, the Tsar Bomba was actually designed to go up to 100 megatons. They thought that was a little bit of overkill for the test, though, and scaled it down to just 50. Nevertheless, that is a ton of explosive. In fact, it is 10 times all of the conventional explosives that were detonated during World War II. And, why bother plotting it on a map? All of Washington, D.C. and all of the Beltway is destroyed at this point. And that just about does it for this lecture. The main takeaway is that the amount of destruction a nuclear weapon can do depends on the type of weapon. If you have a sophisticated but small weapon like the Davy Crockett, you're measuring the 5 psi radius in terms of buildings. If you have an unsophisticated but not as small weapon, like what the United States was dropping at the end of World War II, you're now measuring that blast radius in terms of square miles. Finally, if you have very, very large weapons, the most sophisticated of weapons designed, you're no longer thinking about this in terms of buildings or blocks or square miles, but you're just thinking about the eradication of an entire city. On that somber note, I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.